In the burning heat of the North African desert, where the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly and the sun turned the sand into a glowing sea of gold, one of World War II's most dramatic and strategically decisive battles unfolded. The Battle of Gazala, fought between May 26 and June 21, 1942, near the Libyan port town of Tobruk, became the stage where German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, famously nicknamed the Desert Fox, demonstrated his brilliance as a military commander. This battle would not only solidify Rommel's reputation as one of the most daring and cunning generals of the war, but would also deliver a crushing blow to the Allied forces in North Africa, setting the stage for the high-stakes clash at El Alamein later that year. The battle was not simply a clash of armies, it was a struggle for control over North Africa, and by extension, a key piece of the global war. Whoever held North Africa could potentially dominate the Mediterranean, threaten vital British supply lines through the Suez Canal, and even open the way to Middle Eastern oil fields, resources that were desperately needed by both sides. By the spring of 1942, Rommel's Afrika Korps had already proven themselves a force to be reckoned with. They had pushed the British 8th Army back across Cyrenaica in a stunning counteroffensive earlier that year, halting only when they reached the fortified Gazala line, a defensive position stretching roughly 40 miles south from the coast near Gazala to the barren desert near Bir Hakeim. The Allies, under British General Neil Ritchie, had prepared for a major stand here. The Gazala line was a series of strong defensive boxes, fortified positions manned by infantry and supported by artillery and tanks, spread out across the desert in a line designed to prevent Rommel from breaking through. Each box was surrounded by minefields, barbed wire, and anti-tank guns, making a direct assault costly. The southernmost box, manned by the Free French forces under General Marie-Pierre Koenig, was positioned at Bir Hakeim, an isolated but crucial anchor point for the entire line. But Rommel was no ordinary opponent. Known for his daring maneuvers, his ability to read the battlefield, and his preference for mobile warfare over static fighting, recognized that a head-on attack against the Gazala line would likely fail. Instead, he developed a bold plan, one that would come to be known as the left hook. His idea was to send the bulk of his armored forces on a wide, sweeping movement around the southern flank of the Gazala line, cutting behind the Allied positions, encircling them, and severing their supply lines. By late May 1942, Rommel had assembled a formidable force. His Panzer Army Afrika included the German Afrika Korps with its two elite panzer divisions, the 15th and 21st, along with the Italian Ariete Armored Division and Trieste Motorized Division. Together, they represented a powerful, highly mobile strike force capable of rapid desert movement. Meanwhile, the Allies were confident that their numerical advantage, over 100,000 men, including significant British, Indian, South African, and Free French troops, and their fortified line, would hold. But war in the desert favored speed, surprise, and audacity, qualities Rommel had in abundance. On the evening of May 26, 1942, he launched his attack. The assault began with a feint against the northern section of the Gazala line, intended to pin down Allied reserves and convince them that a frontal attack was coming. At the same time, Rommel's main striking force began its long, looping drive south and then east, heading into the open desert to outflank the Allied positions. The next few days would see one of the most dramatic armored maneuvers of the entire North African campaign. Rommel's forces moved with astonishing speed, navigating the rough desert terrain and leaving dust clouds in their wake. They smashed into the British positions south of Bir Hakeim and pushed toward the rear of the Gazala line, threatening to encircle large parts of the 8th Army. General Ritchie quickly realized the scale of the threat and rushed to reposition his own armored units, setting the stage for a massive tank battle in the desert. The opening days of the Battle of Gazala were marked by chaos, dust, and rapid movement. British and German tanks clashed in a series of running battles across the desert floor. Artillery thundered, and supply columns were attacked from all directions. Rommel's gamble was bold. He had effectively driven his army deep into enemy territory, relying on speed and surprise to prevent the Allies from cutting him off. If his forces stalled or were pinned down, they could be surrounded and destroyed. But Rommel thrived under such risks. The Desert Fox was playing a dangerous game, one that could either lead to total victory or disastrous defeat. Rommel's sweeping move into the southern desert quickly put the British command under pressure. His left hook maneuver had taken his forces far behind the British lines, creating a situation in which he could either completely unhinge the Gazala defenses or be trapped in what could become a deadly pocket. The British 8th Army rushed to counter the move. Armored brigades were dispatched to intercept Rommel's spearheads, leading to a series of violent tank clashes over the next several days. One of the most dramatic stands of the entire campaign occurred at Bir Hakeim, the southern anchor of the Gazala line. This isolated position was defended by the Free French Brigade under General Marie-Pierre Koenig, whose troops had fortified the area with trenches, minefields, and strong defensive positions. For Rommel to fully exploit his outflanking maneuver, Bir Hakeim had to be neutralized. He directed the Italian Ariete Armored Division, supported by German units, to assault the position beginning on May 27. The battle for Bir Hakeim became a symbol of defiance. The Free French, though heavily outnumbered, resisted repeated attacks with determination. Italian tanks were knocked out in large numbers, and German infantry suffered heavy casualties as they tried to breach the perimeter. Koenig's men held out for nearly 2 weeks, tying down a significant portion of Rommel's southern flank and forcing him to divert precious time and resources to deal with them. While Bir Hakeim was holding out, Rommel pressed on toward the British rear. His columns advanced toward a crossroads area known as Knightsbridge, a key hub in the desert tracks that allowed Allied forces to move reinforcements and supplies. The fighting here escalated into one of the largest tank engagements of the North African campaign. The British counterattacks were fierce. The 8th Army had superior numbers of tanks, including the new American-built M3 Grant medium tanks, which were making their combat debut. These tanks, with their 75mm guns, could engage German panzers effectively at longer range than the British Crusaders. For a time, it appeared that Rommel's gamble might fail. His forces were stretched thin, and fuel shortages threatened to cripple his ability to maneuver. But Rommel refused to retreat. Instead, he consolidated his forces in a defensive perimeter that came to be known as the Cauldron. This position, located near Bir al-Hamat, was surrounded by minefields and defended by concentrated anti-tank guns. The Desert Fox turned the tables on the British by luring them into repeated assaults against his strongpoints. British armored units charging into what they believed to be a retreating enemy found themselves ambushed by deadly German 88mm anti-tank guns, which tore through their ranks with devastating effect. The Cauldron became the turning point of the battle. Over several days from May 30th to May 2nd, British attacks were repulsed with heavy losses. Rommel's position stabilized, and he was able to secure supply routes through the minefields, ensuring that fuel and ammunition could reach his troops. The failure of the British to destroy Rommel's forces while they were vulnerable allowed him to go back on the offensive. Meanwhile, Bir Hakeim continued to hold out heroically. Koenig and his Free French troops, surrounded and running low on supplies, finally received orders to withdraw. In a daring night breakout on June 10th to 11th, they fought their way through German and Italian lines, escaping to rejoin the 8th Army. Their resistance had delayed Rommel enough to allow the British to regroup, but the cost had been high, and the overall situation was becoming critical. By mid-June, Rommel was ready to deliver his decisive blow. Having beaten off the British counterattacks and secured his supply lines, he now turned to crush the remaining Allied positions along the Gazala line. His forces moved systematically to eliminate the remaining boxes, overrunning positions that had been weakened by weeks of fighting. The 8th Army, recognizing the danger of being completely encircled, began to fall back toward Tobruk. Knightsbridge, once a key British defensive hub, fell into Axis hands. Rommel's panzers and Italian armor pushed relentlessly forward, their speed and coordination overwhelming the remaining resistance. The desert floor was littered with the wrecks of British tanks, trucks, and artillery pieces. The morale of the 8th Army began to crack under the relentless pressure. Rommel's victory was not yet complete, but the tide had turned decisively in his favor. the stage was set for the final act of the battle, the encirclement and capture of Tobruk, a feat that would stun the Allied world and earn Rommel a Field Marshal's baton. By the third week of June 1942, the British Eighth Army was in full retreat. The Gazala line, which had once been a symbol of Allied strength in North Africa, lay shattered. Rommel had successfully outmaneuvered and outfought his opponents, turning a daring gamble into a strategic masterpiece. But he was not content to merely push the British back. His eyes were set on the ultimate prize, the Libyan port of Tobruk, the most important supply base in the region. Tobruk had been a thorn in the Axis eye for over a year. In 1941, the port had withstood a lengthy siege and became a symbol of Allied resilience. Its deep-water harbor was crucial for maintaining British logistics in North Africa, allowing them to shorten their supply lines and mount operations deeper into Libya. Capturing Tobruk would deprive the Allies of the